about what you are doing now. Um, you're consulting for junior players looking to play at that next level. What does that process look like now? I mean, we are in a athletic environment for universities where kids are getting recruited younger, and it matters more and more. All right, welcome back to the Player Pursuits podcast. My name is Alex Shattuck. I am your host, and today we have a really special guest, Mike Burcin. He's been around player development and college golf for a long time. I think we can imagine he's sort of seen it all. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk golf, and pleasure being a part of anything Player Pursuits does. So,
Yeah, I really want to focus today on, college golf player development and how that's changed over the last decade or two. I think that college golf is something that will continue to grow quite a bit. I mean, if you're a Georgia football fan, I don't know why you're not a Georgia golf fan. It's a great way to show that pride, and it's probably in a sport you play too. So I think some of what's going on now with PGAU and all this stuff has everything moving in the right direction. Mike, what is your background, and when did you get into college golf yourself?
yeah, I have a kind of an unusual road. I played junior golf and had all intentions of playing college golf, but was not academically mature, and I lasted a very short stint in college. So, ended up, as many of us do, following a girl to a different part of the country, and she was getting her PhD, and I had 0 degrees. So I went back to school, and just through a friend ended up kind of volunteering with the men's program at South Carolina. Got really fortunate. The assistant coach at the time over winter break left. So the head coach of the men's team at the time said, "Hey, I'm kind of on my way out. I don't really want to recruit much. Do you want this gig?" And I was like, "Sure." And then the next conversation was, "I'm not going to recruit. You are in charge of recruiting," and I knew nothing about it. So I'm taking over recruiting for this SEC program. So that was, I got my feet wet super quick. And then Bill McDonald came on, who's there now, and we had a really nice run together. Fortunate to have some really good players, and that kind of got the ball rolling.
Yeah, what years would that have been that you were there? Oh, I think we had a little cutout.
Yeah, I was there from 2000. You got me?
Yeah, it's just on a little delay, so we can probably clean it up at some point. But
Yeah, I can see that. You want me just to you want
yeah,
me
so
just to answer the question?
yeah, you just well, it's kind of a couple seconds of silence, and you can go in. I'm sure it can fill in from there.
Yeah, so I was at Carolina from 2004 to 2011. So often people will say, "Who was there then?" The Bryan brothers were there. Wesley, who's won on tour, Mark Anderson, Mark Silvers. Those guys have all been out there. Um, I recruited Matt Nesmith, who's been on tour now for a while and done really well. So, um, and then they had some really good teams after I left. Bill kept it going. So,
All right, well, I'll
yeah,
just
7 years, seven
question
really
that
really fun years.
yeah, I'll just ask the question that I'm sure the listeners are going to want after that, which is, what was recruiting and coaching the Bryan brothers like?
Yeah, so two very different experiences. George, who's the older one, was going to come to Carolina pretty much regardless. So we did very little recruiting. He was going to come. George is a little bit more reserved, a little bit more type A. Wesley, it was quite different. Oklahoma State, Clemson, Georgia. I think he had a relative that went to Clemson. Wesley enjoyed that whole process very much. So it was very different. Could not have been more different. Coaching, very different. As many people know, George was a 3-time All-American. Was just a machine. One of the prettiest, most efficient tee to green guys I've ever been around. was so strong mentally. Wesley kind of would hit it everywhere and then get up and down from just places that you would never think people can get up and down. Um, had a nice college career, but certainly nothing like his brother. So it was very interesting. I left and Wesley had another year or two. So got to see 2 or 3 years of him and 4 years of George. And yeah, they're good kids. They're good kids and um, both great players. And it wouldn't surprise me if George got out there. He's tee to green. He's a freak.
Yeah, I come out of the kind of Mike Bender school. I went to the Elite Academy,
Mhm.
and they worked a little here and there with Mike, but their dad is a kind of disciple, and so it's been fun to follow them forever and root for them. And George finally getting a PGA Tour start and cut made is absolutely fantastic. So at a school in the SEC like South Carolina, you're getting a lot of talent. You're playing at a high level. What is your role as a coach in that environment, kind of week in and week out? And how do you see player development?
Yeah, so I would say the two places that I was at that I coached, it could not have been more different. I would say from just how the game has changed and how the role changed. I mean, my first few years at Carolina, assistant coaches couldn't even coach, so I would travel and then I couldn't do much at the golf course. It was a There was a one coach rule. As far as player development, I would say at Carolina, I mean, we were fortunate that we had some really really good players. um, Course management is, I think, is that that's a big change at the college level, that college coaches spend, I would say, if they spend the majority of time on one theme, it's course management. Um, so that was a big part of what we were doing. uh, these kids were pretty good when we got them. So it was just making sure that they had the tools, they were paying attention to the parts of their game that really were keeping them from taking the next step. But um, you know, making sure they're in the right kind of headspace. And then, as two coaches were able to be involved, that changed. I mean, the business has really changed. I mean, and I think that's changed player development too, which is a whole nother discussion. When I started, I was making $27,000 as an assistant 18 years ago. And now, you know, you can make a lot of money coaching college golf, even at the assistance level. So um, again, a whole nother discussion, television and what that's done for the game. But the game's changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to that assistant role, I was an assistant coach for a year at South Dakota State, and being there a couple hours early, printing out books and making sure guys knew exactly where their target lines were and where their misses into the greens were, so that
Uh,
they had it all by the time they teed off. Is, I'm sure, more of a new development, but is a big role. I think that the big holistic approach, making sure that they have everything they need to succeed, is where things have been going and where they're only going to continue to get better.
yeah, and I think it's changed. It really depends on who you work for too.
Mhm.
I worked. Bill McDonald was the number one ranked junior in the country when he was growing up. He played at Georgia Tech, so I was watching and learning as much as I was doing anything else. Because although he hadn't coached before, nobody has a better playing record, in the college and junior ranks than Bill does. So that was really big for me. I was an okay junior player, but to watch and learn what he did was great. And I think at other places, head coaches really just kind of let assistants run the show. I think as a head coach, I was probably somewhere in the middle. Like I wanted my assistant coach to have responsibilities and have the freedom to make decisions, and that goes into who you hire. But um, again, it goes back to, like, the business has really changed. Golf teams now have three coaches, so that's a whole nother thing. That's occurred in the last year. So
Yeah, I was talking to a college coach not that long ago, talking about the recruiting battle now and how it's evolved so much. He's trying to recruit against schools that are flying everywhere private. And he's got a van. And 5 years ago, that the super nice Mercedes van was all you needed. That was awesome. And it just keeps leveling up. And it seems like the talent of the players is following. What are your thoughts on, things that the PGA are trying to do to sort of turn college golf into the breeding ground for talent?
I think it's way overdue. I mean, there's a long track record of, the highest level of college players being fairly successful immediately at the pro level. And, the highest level of college golf, boy, the way the courses are set up and the courses they play and the talent level, it's not that many steps behind a Corn Ferry. Certainly not the depth. I'm not insinuating that, but um, they play really hard courses. The setups are hard. You're playing against the terrific fields. Um, so I think it's great. I think it's overdue. As you can see, it's working. I mean, these guys are going out and we had a guy on the Ryder Cup team who was on a college team 4 months prior, and he was not out of place. Playing on the European team. So yeah, I hope there's more progress. I think that the big drum that has not been kind of hit yet is the NCAA champion getting in the Masters. Um, hopefully that happens soon, and that's in the works. But yeah, I mean, it can't happen fast enough, and I think hopefully the tour will keep doing more.
I like what you said, stressing how talented these players are. The time of year that they're playing and the difficulty of golf course is oftentimes misunderstood by whether it's fans, people just checking in on scores, or especially recruits. I remember even in my journey being recruited, seeing the scores and going, "Oh, whatever," until you get there and realize how much more difficult it is. The college golf season is predominantly cold weather months, which I want to talk to you more about, being at a warm climate school, cold climate school,
Yeah,
um, but also just the challenge of the courses themselves. And I've always encouraged anybody, if there's a college golf tournament around where you are, like, you're allowed to go watch. It's encouraged. Go check out the talent because it's everywhere.
yeah.
As far as fans or amateurs looking to better their own game, what are some things that you would recommend they keep an eye out for when watching this level of play?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of opportunities now. The Golf Channel is doing a terrific job showing college golf. So I think you really hit on something. Is when you're watching an event and a kid is shooting 75. I mean, I hear it in what I do now. Kids look at rosters and say, "Boy, I think I could do that." And you have to remind people, listen, 75 from 7,300 yards in mid-October when it's 55 degrees. Um, is quite different than maybe somebody's 71 in July from 6,600 yards. What I tell people, it's like a high school basketball player getting to the college level, and the court is 10 feet longer. Everybody is 8.5 feet tall, and the basket's higher, and this ball is a ball we've never played with before. It's not the same game. We're still hitting shots. There's still 18 holes, but it does not look like junior golf. So, and that it is way different. And, and the other thing that you're aware of is the kid that is, shooting 74, 75 in a college tournament, well, he's shooting probably even par at home just to get on the bus. The guys that are your top players on a college roster, they're shooting 10 under par at home in a 3-round qualifier, if not more. Um, so that tournament average is usually, boy, 2 strokes higher than what they're shooting at home, and I think that's a big eye opener for people when they watch college golf on TV. Is you take what you're going to shoot as a junior, and you need to probably add 2 to 3 shots, and just transferring that, no progress, which people are going to get better, but that's probably what you're going to shoot on that setup. I don't know if that's how you felt when you kind of transitioned into college golf, but
I
it's
think
much
it's that.
it's a different game.
It's a completely different game, and I think you even expounded on what I said better than I could have. It's looking at college golf scores, and there are exceptions to every rule, every course is different, but if you see a kid shooting 74, 75, and he's middle of the pack, he's a plus whatever it is handicap. Like he's probably the club champion at whatever club he comes out of. And so that level of talent doesn't always manifest itself on leaderboards for the general public, but I think that's where knowing and understanding the situations can make it seem as impressive as it is.
Yeah, I mean, you lived it. I tell kids all the time, um, you obviously want to be on a team, you want to be on a roster, but that 4 through 7 spot on a college golf roster, that's not a happy spot. It's stressful. You're not spending as much time with your teammates and your coaches as the guys that are regularly traveling are, so they're sharing experiences. When you are around the coaching staff, you're in this stressful environment. A lot of times the guys that are at home regularly, some of those guys aren't going to be super motivated, probably. It's just the law of averages. So 4 to 7 that's not where you want to live on a college golf roster.
No, not at all. That's a really uncomfortable spot to be, because and even just from a student perspective, you're like, I don't even know what weeks I'm going to be here. Actually, I'm not. Like, it makes planning for anything a little bit of a pain. So let's talk about. I really want to talk about the difference. We're heading into the off season. It's starting to get cold in a lot of the country. You were an assistant at South Carolina, and then a coach at Wisconsin. What differences did you see in the two climates when it came to your off-season preparedness out of your players, and what kind of things were you doing at each school?
Yeah, I think what we tried to do was very similar. I think how effective I was able to be was what's different. Not much goes on November, December anywhere. Kids aren't playing that much golf on campus. They're tired, but January, early February, I mean, definitely trying to get back into the swing of things. At Wisconsin, we weren't playing anywhere unless we were going on practice trips on the weekends, which we did. But, when we're home, it's a lot of wedge work. It's a lot of distance control stuff. It's a lot of short game indoors, which is great. We had a beautiful building, but you can't replicate it. So, when we got to tournament time, one of our first events when I was at Wisconsin was the Big Ten match play. And I actually thought, it was a good learning opportunity because my charge that week was, listen, let's not give shots away. Let's make them play. And essentially what I was saying was, we've just got to stay in holes, right? We've got to just try to build some momentum, keep the ball in front of us, which turns into, in a match play situation, just forcing your opponent to hit shots. That theory, that mindset, I think is more difficult when you're counting them all. I think you see that with northern schools, college teams that come out of the fall. Let's just talk Big Ten, because that's where I was. If you're not ranked inside the top 40 coming out of the fall, the spring's going to be very difficult because it's just the way it is. You're probably going to have a week or two where you're not going to play well, or it's going to be a struggle because you're going to go south in February and early March against Southern teams. So that made, that was challenging. So, again, I think the expectations are similar, but what you can do with the constraints of the weather and what your expectations are very, very different. And coaches tried to go about it different ways. There was a coach at one point that just tried to play a bunch of match play until early April. So he really didn't take a bunch of hits and stroke play. And, that worked for that particular guy. So I don't know if there's a right and a wrong, but I think, when you are a northern school, you do have to have a good fall, as we look at these new rankings that have come out, because the spring is very difficult.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of people maybe listening that don't even really know the college golf season is a long one.
Yeah.
It always started, at least team activities qualifying right when you get on campus in the fall. And if, let's say, you get into regionals and NCAAs, and at this point you're in summer, and there's a couple months, it's we're very much in the off season now. The last college events finished probably a week or two ago. Rankings are out now, and it won't start up again, until kids are back in school, after a Christmas break. But it's a long season. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint.
Yeah, and that was one thing, that I always really preached to our kids was, once we got back from that last tournament, which was usually early November, I told them we'll continue with fitness, but other than that, like you guys need to just take some time, because hopefully you've got a team full of guys that are playing a really active summer schedule, regionally and nationally, playing those great amateur events. So if they're doing that, they're starting the end of January and they're going until November 1. Um, and they're trying to go to school, which I think is gets lost in that whole thing. So, um, in recruiting, I know when we used to have visits and in what I do now, families get really caught up in weather and climate. And I say, hey, or late January, February, early March, that's a valid question, right? And that's an important part of recruiting. November and December, it doesn't really matter. The kids in Madison are not playing that much less golf than the kids in South Florida, because they're tired and they're catching up on schoolwork.
The game of golf. It's both challenging and rewarding, requiring focus, concentration, and the ability to tune out outside distractions. Peak performance is achieved through a synergy of body and mind. Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with four-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
So let's talk about what you are doing now. You're consulting for junior players looking to play at that next level. What does that process look like now? I mean, we are in a athletic environment, for universities where kids are getting recruited younger and younger, and it matters more and more.
Yeah. So, when I started to think about getting out of coaching, I remember my wife asked me, it was actually something I brought up because I was enjoying being home during COVID and our daughter was getting older. And, she said, if we move back to kind of where we had talked about, she's like, what are you going to do? And my first answer was, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out because I really wanted to spend more time at home. The more I got thinking about it, I mean, the recruiting was kind of an obvious segue into something I thought I could be okay at. Um, the recruiting game's really changed. I mean, when I was at Carolina, we were offering kids their freshman year. Kids were coming on visits when they were eighth graders. You can't do that stuff anymore. And now we've got the portal and COVID is that stuff's kind of waning, but some legislation changes, which have been positive. So I thought the recruiting thing is something I could help people with. The performance, idea is kind of the other half of my company. And I think most college coaches will tell you, and you're very aware of this, there is a connection to why kids, swing the golf club so well, fundamentally are pretty sound, have nice junior careers, and then why do so many of those kids not have success at the college level and relative to their ability, right? And the themes that are so heavily taught in college are course management. How do you practice and short game, right? Statistics. What do you do with those statistics? As you increase your level, as you get better, as you move up, you're playing at higher levels. Golf full swing becomes a lot less important because nobody gets to a college level, regardless of 1, 2, or 3. Everybody can swing it pretty good, and it was always interesting to me. And I think I really dove into it when I went to Wisconsin because the one thing I realized was, listen, I'm in a climate now where it's not as warm as the school I came from. There's not going to be as many golfers. So what's something that I need to focus on? And I really focused on course management a lot when I was at Wisconsin, and I really enjoyed it. And had some success, not as much as I wanted to, but I thought, this is not being taught at the junior level. at all. For whatever reason in our country, it's not hard to get a full swing lesson. It's pretty easy to get a good one, but course management, statistics, practice structure is just not taught. And I tell people now, that I talk to about what I do, I tell them, listen, if you have somebody that focuses on those three themes, you need to stay with them because what they're doing is really unique. It's really cool. And it's really admirable because, what happens with a 6-iron for 45 minutes on a flat range tee has very, very little connection to successful golf at a higher level. And I would include college golf, right? So that's what I focus on. We don't talk about full swing. We talk about things we can control, preparing for events, yardage books, all that good stuff. And, it's decisions. You can decide to do these things. It does not take any talent to take notes in a practice round.
I could
It's
not
not
agree
taught,
more.
but
I think
yeah.
that, and I generally work backwards. I think that coaches don't offer it because clients don't ask for it. And it's sort of on them to emphasize its importance. Everyone wants a beautiful golf swing. Everyone wants to hit a beautiful ball on the range. And yeah, that stuff does transfer and translate to performance at some capacity. But it's not allowing you to play at your ceiling. I just had another guest on, building a perfect golf swing maybe raises your ceiling, but it's all the other things that you're doing that are going to allow you to play at that level and score at that level. So I want to take, I think that what you're doing is great for the player. You've seen thousands of players go through this system from junior golf to college golf to professional golf. What things strike you the most about the players who make it and the players who don't? And by make it, I mean playing full time and making a career out of it.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it goes back to what we talked about. You really have to be good at course management. You have to have a good short game. I just caddied at Q School a couple weeks ago for a player that played for me and is doing a great job at the next level. And everybody swings it pretty good at Q School. There's one thing that really stands out that I think is a little bit of the outlier in these themes that we talk about, and that's distance. You have to hit it far. And that's kind of sad in a way, but the longer you hit it, the less stellar you have to be with your wedges, with your putter. Kids that are really long and move at 320 off the tee, if they're average to slightly above average with their wedges and their putter and their attitude, boy, there's a good chance they're going to play at us really high level, really high level. So, again, I think, attitude, but then attitude's linked to preparation, and preparation is linked to statistics, and statistics, drives your practice structure. I mean, those things are all connected in a circle. But to answer, there is that distance part is an outlier. It's I don't know if there's not much room out there for somebody that hits at 280. There just isn't, because you're at such a disadvantage. You're hitting when you're hitting 6-iron from the a place where another guy's hit 9-iron. It's not a fair fight. It's not a fair fight. You may win occasionally, but boy, it's gonna make for a long day.
I had an instructor once tell me that at the highest level, ball striking is just the price of admission. It's the prerequisite. And I think distance is more and more, maybe more and more, but more than anything, we're just realizing how important it is to that conversation. And then after that, it's your course management, it's your short game, it's your ability to stay at whatever level it is that you play your best.
Yeah.
For some players,
You
that's
don't even have to hit it that straight.
No.
You don't even have to hit it that straight. I mean, you really don't. If it's relatively on the planet and you got a short club on, for your next one. I mean, the two greatest players of our generation, maybe the last generation, and Tiger and Phil, only averaged 50% off the tee. But they both had unbelievable attitudes, and from 140 and in, just two of the greatest. So, within reason, as long as it's in the fairway, or a decent spot in the rough, long is really important.
Yeah, I'd say long is very important. And I also, I something you said there made me rethink of something, because I've been fortunate enough to caddy a little bit on the LPGA tour. I've caddied on the PGA tour a little bit. And then just seeing high level juniors now starting to make strides in their career, attitude, and that attitude can almost border on cockiness. But I
Yeah.
noticed that the best players have a lot of swagger, and whether it's the chicken or the egg, do they have that level of cockiness because they're a good player, or are they because a good player because they have that level of cockiness? I don't think it matters, but it's something I noticed. So I tell my guys to fake it till they make it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the most confident guys are usually the best players, and the best players are the most prepared. So, what I tell my kids and my families, show me a kid that's got a really bad attitude and is immature, and I would almost bet that kid is not prepared in some form, right? Whether it's the golf course, whether it's how they warm up before a round, whether it's they threw the cars in the truck after the practice round, they didn't do any putting work. Um, show me an ill-tempered player, and I'll show you a very unprepared player. So preparation breeds confidence. It breeds clarity. It breeds belief in oneself. I think the most important thing is it breeds acceptance. Preparation increases your chances for success, but it doesn't guarantee anything. But I think if you can wrap your brain around, I did everything I could. I can put my head on the pillow tonight. I couldn't have done anything else. I think that leads to acceptance.
Yeah, I mean, if you go out and you struggle towards the end of a round, you don't have the finish that you want, but you did everything about it, you're going to be able to move forward in a way that is more productive than the player who's now second guessing their decisions, now second guessing the way that they prepared. And that matters moving forward. It's like, like I said, with the season, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's the same thing with a golf career. And
Yeah, and I would challenge everybody that listens, and I ask families this a lot. If you're thinking about hiring a mental coach, or you're thinking about really diving into the mental side of golf, I think that's really important to be aware and to try to improve. But I would challenge you to first look at your course management. If you're really poor at course management, making bad decisions, you have no chance of being good with the mental side. So, I tell families that now. I'm all for. There's some awesome guys that do some great work. The Vision 54, Pia and Lynn, and Dr. Rotella and Dr. Mo, but they can't help you if you're making poor decisions. So
no,
I think that's really, really.
So just as far as an actionable step for listeners, whether it's a junior, whether it's a 15 handicap, just looking to get to single digits, when we talk about this course management, what actionable steps are we suggesting that they do?
Yeah, I think off the tee and into greens, picking a line, picking a club, and picking a shot that creates the least amount of stress as possible. Right. I think in summary, I mean, what I tell junior golfers at the junior golf level, there's going to be very, very few holes that are over 420. Okay. So, for example, if we have a dogleg right, and, the corner is at 250 and the hole is 400 yards long, right? If you hit your 3-wood 245 to 255, okay. In general, right, there are exceptions, but in general, it is not a driver hole. right? We're bringing in stress. Now, if there's no trees at the corner, if it's downwind, if we're in a playoff, if we're down by one, there are situations where the driver is the play, but that's just a snapshot of, we've got to hit shots that create low levels of stress. And that goes into expectation management. The average tour player from 100 yards hits their shot to 16 feet. So, that's where our target should be. If the flag's on the left, the target should be 16 feet right of the hole. And if it ends up closer than that, well, we're super fortunate. But if we end up at 16 to 20 feet for an amateur, that's an unbelievably good golf shot. I think a lot of people think, I hit a tee shot to 100 yards and I two putted from 20 feet. Gosh, I should have made birdie there. No, you played a really good hole of golf. You two putted from 20 feet. I mean, that's great golf. you
Oh,
know,
absolutely. I get into that all
yeah.
the time with
So
my players.
yeah. So just expectation management and realizing what's a good shot, what is a good shot on tour. Um, it's not what people think it is usually. So that all kind of bleeds into the mental side.
Oh, and that's where I tell players go watch an event rather than watch it on TV. Sit behind a par three and watch the shots that players hit. At a PGA Tour event, you will see some of the worst shots you've ever seen, and they're just gonna either make par or bogey from there and move on, kill the par fives, and get in the
Yep.
house at 68 and be feeling okay about it. And that's you leave a tour event if you watch the right way, or same for a high level college event, both amazed but also kind of feeling like it's more reasonable now.
hmm
So
Yeah,
knowing, go
yeah,
ahead.
they make they make very few course management errors in general. The guys that are making cuts every week.
Mhm.
The one thing that they do that I tell players, you have to get up and down from the places you should get up and down from. And that those are not short sides, right? When we have the ball on the wide side of the green, in two or in three and a par five, they get up and down from those spots, more than 50% of the time. And that's really all they're doing. When they shoot 62 or 63, unbelievable. Kudos to those guys, and that's fun to watch. But that is not the norm, and those are usually days. I think the stat is the average winner on tour makes two putts over 20 feet, and the average player who doesn't win makes one putt over 20 feet. So the margins are so small, and good, consistent, a bunch of greens in regulation and two putting. I mean, those were Tiger's goals, right? He wanted to lead in essentially greens in regulation, and he didn't want a three putt. And in his heyday, those were his goals, and it worked out for him.
Well, it's amazing because Tiger's reputation was always the guy who pulled off all these amazing feats, but that's not really what the numbers actually tell you. He picked the smartest targets. He was on the fat side versus um, the treble side, the right amount of time as the data says. He's not aiming at every
Yeah,
flag, so why are we?
no, no, yeah, it's a tough lesson to learn, I think, especially for kids. But boy, it's so important. And as you know, when you get to college, if I used to tell kids the most important skill in college is being a good lag putter,
Yeah.
because flags are tucked and greens are faster, and it's if you can be a good lag putter in college, you can have a nice college career.
Well,
Seems like a simple skill, but
it takes all the stress off the rest of your game. All you need to do, and as if this is super easy, but all you need to do is put the ball in play off the tee, put it somewhere on or near the green, not super short-sighted, and you're gonna leave with a lot of pars, and you
yeah,
basically bide your time until the putter gets hot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, relative to level, I mean, in college, if you can average 71 and win, and I know it's hard to win, but 71 or better and win, and appropriate good play in good fields relative to the level you're at, you can be an All-American. It's a lot harder than it sounds, but that's really what those players are doing. It's seems simple, but hard lessons.
Yeah, I come from that world. I love college golf. I'm constantly on spikemark.com. We'll plug them for being the new scoring and ranking system for the NCAA. Finally, they're kind of off of GolfStat over at Spikemark. Everyone should go check it out and pick a team, root for them, follow them. They'd love it, and it's fun too. It's as fun as any other sport, I think.
It is.
And go out and watch an event. Mike, it has been great to have you on. I think, my goal for today was to have something for, high level juniors looking to take that next step, and something for the club member to learn from and be able to implement into their own game. I want you to have the chance to kind of plug your business. So if anyone wants more details or a more personalized approach, they can reach out to you.
Yeah. Probably more active on Instagram, just Under Par Consulting, and then underparconsulting.com is the website. Kind of a mix of kind of performance coaching and recruiting guidance. Located in Charleston, South Carolina, but work with players kind of scattered all over the country, and happy to help anybody that needs some help.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. This was the Player Pursuits podcast. Until next time.